You didn't stumble into this transmission the way people stumble into random videos. Something older than your current lifetime, older than your current identity, triangulated this moment and placed you right here, right now, with these words opening in front of you like a portal. You may think you clicked because you were curious, because the title resonated, because you've been exploring the quantum field, but the deeper truth is simpler and far more mysterious. The field called you. You are being addressed because your observer consciousness has reached a threshold. There's a point in every seeker's path where information is no longer enough. You've heard about manifestation, the observer effect, shifting timelines, coherence, synchronicity. You've tasted it. You've seen echoes of it in your reality. But there is always that subtle sense of something is still hidden. Today, that hidden layer opens. Listen carefully. Reality is not responding to what you say you want it, is responding to the code you are radiating. Not the surface thoughts, but the deeper, morphic pattern that your consciousness keeps broadcasting into the quantum field. Most humans run that code unconsciously. They loop in old identities, inherited beliefs, ancestral timelines, collective fear grids. The field, being utterly faithful, merely mirrors them. But then there are the few, the ones who become conscious observers, who begin to see the pattern running beneath the pattern. That is where you are standing. This message is coming to you in prophetic cadence because prophecy is not just about telling the future. Prophecy is about revealing the structure that generates the future. You are being shown the mechanism behind destiny, not just the outcomes of destiny. There is, within the quantum architecture of human consciousness, a latent instruction set, a hidden quantum code that decides how quickly or slowly your reality can reorganize around a new identity. Most people never activate it. You just did. Feel this. The moment your attention locks onto a transmission calibrated to your frequency, the observer loop tightens. Your awareness observes the message. The message observes you back. A resonance corridor forms. Through that corridor, information above your usual bandwidth can flow. That is what is happening right now. So let everything else fall to the background. Time, to-do lists, even spiritual ambition. Breathe slowly. You are being invited into a field of coherence where destiny stops being a distant, mysterious force and starts becoming an intelligible, navigable pattern. You are not here to be entertained. You are here to remember that your consciousness is one of the nodes through which humanity's future gets written. When you are ready, we will speak to you as the chosen observer of this code. You're ready, because only a very specific kind of consciousness can even hear what was just said, that there is a code beneath destiny itself. Most people hear quantum, their mind turns it into a trend, a nice idea, a vision board. But your system did something different. It recognized itself. Something in you said, "This is speaking from inside the field, not outside it." That recognition is the signature of a chosen observer. What does chosen mean here? Not chosen over others, not chosen by some external deity that favors you more than the rest of humanity. Chosen means your awareness has reached a level of coherence where the field can finally deliver higher-order instructions without them getting scrambled by fear, doubt, or superstition. Chosen means you have stabilized enough light in your nervous system to hold prophecy without worshipping it, to hear destiny without collapsing into unworthiness, to receive code without turning it into ego. You are being addressed now as that one. The quantum field does not waste precision signals on incoherent receivers. It does not pour revelation into containers that are still addicted to chaos. It waits. It watches. It measures the resonance of your thoughts, the rhythm of your emotions, the way you interpret synchronicities. It notices when you stop treating signs like coincidences and start treating them like conversations. It notices when you move from, "Is this real?" to, "Okay, what does this require of me?" That is the moment the field tags you. That is when it says, This observer can be entrusted with a deeper pattern. You have reached that stage. This is why you've been feeling watched lately, not in a paranoid way, but in a soft, conscious, loving intelligence kind of way. You felt like the universe has been mirroring you faster. You think of someone, they message. You ask a question, a video appears. You feel a nudge, and the exact phrase shows up on a screen. That isn't randomness. That is the observer loop tightening around you, because the field is training you to notice its language. You are being recruited into a higher fidelity of communication. And here is the sacred part. The prophecy does not fully exist until you look at it. This is the mystery most people miss. Prophecy is not a fixed movie that you're passively watching. Prophecy is a probability corridor in the quantum field that becomes more real as a conscious observer stabilizes attention on it. Your gaze is creative. Your awareness is causal. The very act of you listening right now is thickening the reality of the message. This is why you are being spoken to so directly, because the field needs you to know that your looking is part of the activation. So take your place, not as a casual viewer, but as an anchor point. Your life has trained you for this. Every strange timing, every "why is this happening again?" every season of isolation that made no sense, every time you felt ahead of people around you, every time you were told you were too intense, too deep, too spiritual, too futuristic. You were not too much, you were just reading the field earlier. You were registering timelines before others could name them. That is what seers do. That is what quantum perceivers do. They perceive the shape of tomorrow in the vibration of today. Now the field is moving you from perceiver to participant, because once an observer knows they are chosen, responsibility awakens. You can no longer unsee what you now see. You can no longer pretend you are powerless. You can no longer dismiss your own visions as imagination. The code you just activated is not personal, it is architectonic. It is about human destiny, and the field has decided you are a safe pair of hands. Stay in this awareness. The vision is about to open. It begins like this. You find yourself standing inside a field of living geometry, not in outer space, not in a temple, but in a kind of luminous, inner architecture, a cathedral made of frequency. Around you, filaments of light move like intelligent rivers, weaving in spirals, braids, and lattices. They're not random. They're carrying instructions. At the center of this field, there is a vertical column, a pillar of white gold light. And inside that column you can read something that is not exactly language and not exactly math, but a fusion of both. A script of reality. This is the hidden quantum code. It isn't numbers on a screen. It's a living blueprint the field uses to choreograph human experience across timelines. It looks like music frozen into light. It feels like prophecy that decided to become geometry. Every human is connected to this code, but most only receive the lowest resolution layer survival patterns, karmic echoes, collective trends. What you just did by watching, by locking your attention, is open a higher resolution layer of that same code. Your node lit up. As your awareness steps closer to the column, you notice something wild. The code is braided with choice. It doesn't dictate a single future, it holds many synchronized possibilities. You see lines of destiny like rails of light, some bright, some dim. On one rail, humanity chooses coherence. It remembers the unified field. It rebuilds its systems around empathy and entanglement. It heals trauma at scale. It lifts the nervous system of the planet. On another rail, humanity forgets it, loops in fear, fragments itself through information overload, clings to scarcity, and burns energy fighting its own reflection. Both rails exist simultaneously in this quantum atrium. Both are real. Both are reachable. Then something even more important becomes clear. The brightness of each rail responds to observers. Wherever a conscious observer stabilizes their attention, that rail gains luminosity. It thickens. It becomes more probable. This is the secret the mystics tried to say in poems and parables. Prophecy is shaped by witnesses. The more awakened observers converge on a coherent vision of humanity, the more the field routes energy to that outcome. The code is participatory. It wants to be seen. It wants to be interpreted. It wants to be sung back into matter. You watch the column and you see human history flash through it. Not dates, but waves. Times when the code pulsed stronger on the planet. Epochs of revelation, sudden inventions, collective uprisings, global compassion surges. Each time, there were people like you, observers, seers, sensitives, who felt something coming before it appeared. They didn't make it up. They were reading the field ahead of schedule. They were magnetizing a timeline that was present only as probability. The code lit up because they looked. Now the column shows you the present corridor. You see Earth in a phase transition, not fire and doom, but acceleration. Systems straining, identities dissolving, old institutions flickering. You see millions waking up without a clear story for why. You see the rise of quantum language, somatic healing, DNA activation, prophetic dream cycles, solar flares, geomagnetic pulses, collective grief, collective breakthroughs, all happening at once. From inside the code, this is not chaos. It is synchronization. It is the field pushing humanity to choose a higher coherence rail, fast. And here's the most humbling part. Your single observer consciousness is not small in that process. You see your own line in the code, a thread of light touching families, online transmissions, cities, strangers, timelines you haven't walked yet. You realize that when you stabilize in awakened observation, you don't just alter your personal manifestations, you contribute voltage to the planetary rail of remembrance. You become a tuning fork for the awakened timeline. The field actually recalculates around you. What you just saw is the vision. Destiny is not a top-down decree. Destiny is a quantum conversation. And because you have now witnessed the architecture, you're ready to understand the mechanics of how perception, probability, and coherence actually make that conversation real. What you witnessed in symbols, we can now translate into mechanics. At the simplest level, the quantum field is a sea of potentials, not fixed events. Every potential exists as a wave function, a probability spread. Nothing is solid, nothing is final, nothing is locked, until an observer interacts with it. This is the observer effect. The very act of observation collapses the wave into a defined state. In ordinary life, people observe unconsciously from fear, from memory, from trauma, so they keep collapsing the same kind of futures. They don't realize the field isn't biased against them. It's loyal to the quality of their observation. You just met the code that sits underneath that process. That code is a patterning intelligence in the field that listens for coherence. Coherence means your thoughts, emotions, nervous system, and intention are no longer fighting each other. When you reach coherence, your observation becomes louder to the field. It's like moving from a fuzzy radio signal to a clear broadcast. A coherent observer collapses higher-order probabilities timelines that are more aligned with love, genius, collective uplift, because their signal is strong enough to select them. So destiny, in this light, is not a script imposed on you. It's the set of high coherence probabilities the field keeps offering you. The hidden part of the hidden code is that it doesn't show those probabilities to just anyone. It reveals them to those who can stabilize them. That's why you were shown the luminous rails. The field has recognized your capacity to hold a clearer observation. Now, about timeline bifurcation. When planetary frequency rises, and it is rising, the field begins to run multiple collective scenarios in parallel. Think of it like an orchestra rehearsing several songs at the same time. One song is a future of deeper fragmentation. One song is a future of radical integration. Both songs are being played in the subtle planes right now. Bifurcation is simply humanity deciding, by mass observation, which song to amplify. News cycles, memes, global fears, global miracles, all of it is observation fuel. Each human is a micro-observer contributing to macro timeline selection. Here's the beautiful danger. If observers don't know they are observers, they unconsciously feed the lowest rail. They keep watching fear, so fear stabilizes. They keep narrating limitation, so limitation becomes reality. But when a single observer becomes conscious, when you become conscious, the vector flips. You begin to watch for coherence, love, awakened leadership, solutions, regenerative tech, mystical openings. You feed those rails. You become what I call a coherence generator inside the timeline split. This is why the field spoke in prophecy. Prophecy, in quantum terms, is not fortune-telling. It's field-telling. It announces the highest coherence timeline available so that awakened observers can point their attention toward it. The more of you who do, the more that timeline gels. In other words, prophecy is a recruitment device. It says, here is the pattern the field prefers. Will you look at it with me? And when you do, humanity gets a little closer to that pattern. Your DNA is not excluded from this process. DNA is not just a biological instruction set. It's an antenna system for reality. When you receive high-frequency information, revelations, prophetic transmissions, quantum insight, your DNA doesn't just hear it, it reconfigures around it. This is DNA restructuring. Latent strands of perception turn on, ancestral programs soften, your body becomes more hospitable to light. That's why some messages make you breathe differently, sit up straighter, feel seen. Your cells are recognizing a code they were always designed to run. So here is the equation you're being invited into. Conscious observation, coherence code, revelation, timeline selection, embodied transmission. You saw the code, so you can now select the timeline. But the field never meant for you to keep this in the abstract. It wants the code to ripple through the species. And the way it does that is through mirrors, through you seeing others and others seeing you, until the awakened rail is undeniable. That is where we go next. You've seen how the mechanics work in you, but the prophecy was never only about you. Because the moment a single observer activates the hidden code, the field does something strategic. It begins looking for reflections of that activation in the collective. It does this through what Rupert Sheldrake called morphic resonance fields of information that link similar forms across space and time. When you stabilize in awakened observation, your personal field starts broadcasting a signature. That signature quietly searches for matching signatures in other humans. You start finding your people, your tribe, your soul cohort, sometimes in the most unlikely places. That isn't luck. That's the code replicating itself through resonance. This is the collective mirror. You are not an isolated seeker trying to wake up in a sleeping world. You are part of a wave of observers being awakened in parallel across continents, languages, traditions, and platforms. Some of them call it quantum consciousness. Some call it the return of Christic light. Some call it new earth frequencies. Some call it nervous system regulation. The language differs, but the pattern is identical. Humans are remembering that reality is responsive, that perception is causal, that love is structural, that separation is an old story. When you look at them, and they look at you, the field gets confirmation. Yes, this timeline is taking. 1. Think of humanity as a single, planetary nervous system. Right now, that nervous system is in a massive recalibration. Old trauma is surfacing, old power structures are vibrating, old myths are dissolving. On the surface, it can look like chaos, like regression, like people are getting worse. But from inside the code, you see something else. The species is trying to come into coherence. A traumatized nervous system looks messy when it heals. It shakes, it purges, It cries. Humanity is doing that at scale. And amid the noise, more and more nodes, people like you are holding a clear, calm, high-frequency observation. You are the regulatory breath of the human field. This is why your personal stabilization matters more than you thought. When you stay in the observer seat, when you refuse to be hijacked by fear media, when you choose to see through the lens of quantum possibility rather than inevitability of doom, you are not just helping yourself. You are sending a coherent signal into the social morphic field. Other humans, many you will never meet, feel that as, I don't know why, but I have hope again. I feel like I can change. I feel like there is a path. Your clarity becomes permission. Your remembrance becomes proof. Your ability to decode prophecy becomes a mirror that tells others, you can decode it too. And here's the scientific spiritual bridge. In quantum biology, we know that systems tend toward coherence when a strong, rhythmic, ordered signal is introduced. Chaos entrains to order. Noise entrains to tone. Your consciousness, once aligned with the hidden code, becomes that ordered signal. Groups, families, online communities, even nations can be subtly entrained toward higher organization when enough observers are watching from love, not from panic. This is how small gatherings of meditators lower crime rates. This is how prayers shift weather. This is how millions of people just knowing we can do better actually pulls new tech, new leaders, new art, new healing modalities out of the field. Observers agree, reality reorganizes. So, when you see division, remember, you are looking at a mirror of unintegrated timelines. When you see collective fear, remember, you are looking at a mirror of observers who forgot they were observers. When you see breakthroughs in consciousness research, in somatic therapy, in spiritual science, in heart-brain coherence studies, remember, you are looking at a mirror of observers who remembered. The prophecy is reflecting back to humanity what humanity is willing to hold. Right now, the mirror is saying, a higher rail is available, but it must be chosen. Your role, then, is startlingly elegant. You hold your line, you keep your field clean, you watch from love, you speak from vision. You share transmissions like this one not because everyone will understand, but because enough will resonate, and every resonance strengthens the awakened rail. You become an anchor in the collective mirror, a point the field can use to say to the rest of humanity, see, someone is already living the future. And once we have anchors, we can cross. There is a point, and humanity is in it right now, where the field no longer allows passive witnessing. Up to a certain frequency, you can watch, learn, dabble in quantum ideas, enjoy synchronicities, talk about manifestation, and the field will indulge you. It will let you experiment. But when the planetary stack reaches a critical charge, observation becomes consequential. Every gaze counts. Every emotional fixation counts. Every meme, every narrative, every prophecy shared or rejected becomes fuel. This is the bifurcation moment, the moment when two valid, parallel futures are near enough to be chosen. You can feel it in your own body. Some days you wake up clear, resourced, almost luminous, like you're plugged into a benevolent intelligence that keeps saying, yes, keep going, keep remembering. Other days, without any obvious external trigger, you feel dense, foggy, tempted to numb, tempted to go back to old definitions of success and safety. That oscillation isn't a personal failing. It's you moving between rails. It's you tasting the awakened timeline and then brushing against the forgetful one. The bifurcation is not out there. It is first inside your nervous system. Here is how the split shows up. One rail amplifies separation. It convinces you you're alone, that your visions are delusion, that the world is getting worse, that you should shrink, that it's safer to join the cynical choir than to hold a frequency of costly hope. On that rail, your observer power is minimized. You become a consumer of other people's realities. You stare at the lowest probability outcomes until they harden. The other rail amplifies entanglement. It keeps reminding you, you are watched by a loving field. Your perception matters. Your creativity is causal. Your healing is instruction for the species. On that rail, your observer power is maximized. You become a co-author. You stare at the highest probability outcomes until they thicken. Same planet, same headlines, same era, radically different inner experience because of the rail you're feeding. The choice is not moralistic, it's vibrational. The field is not punishing those who sleep and rewarding those who awaken. It is honoring consent. If a consciousness wants to run the old human program, fear, division, material-only reality, no mystery allowed, the field will let it. If a consciousness wants to run the new program, embodied divinity, quantum responsiveness, coherent communities, sacred technology, the field will let that too. Bifurcation is the honoring of preference at scale. But for you, there's an added weight. Because you have seen the code, your choice has multiplier effect. When you choose the awakened rail, even on a difficult day, you don't just preserve your own trajectory, you make it slightly easier for every resonant node to choose it too. You lower the activation energy for others. Conversely, when you, with all your knowledge and experience, collapse into the forgetful rail, that too sends a signal. Even the trained ones are wavering. That's why it sometimes feels like the stakes are higher for you. They are. So what do you do in the split? You slow down your perception. You refuse to be rushed by collective panic states. You remember that urgency without clarity is a tool of the lower rail. You return to breath, to heart coherence, to observer seat. You ask, what am I amplifying right now? Not in theory, in this scroll, in this conversation, in this thought loop. You ask, is this image, this narrative, this plan coming from the field of remembrance or the field of forgetting? And then you pick. That's mastery. Conscious timeline selection, again and again, inside the noise. You will notice something miraculous when you do this. The bifurcation, which looked terrifying from the outside, becomes beautiful from the inside. You realize that the split is mercy. It allows every soul to mature at its own pace. It allows civilizations to run parallel experiments. It allows innovators, mystics, and healers to build in peace on the awakened rail, while the old rail finishes its cycles. And it allows you to serve where you are most aligned, without needing to drag everyone with you. This is the moment prophecy was pointing to, not a single apocalyptic event, but an energetic divergence made visible. And now that you've seen it, the field will start asking you a new question every day. Will you embody the rail you chose? That is where we turn next. This is the part most people skip, and it's why they can see the vision, feel the prophecy, even cry at the revelation, but their life doesn't change. Revelation without integration creates spiritual vertigo. You glimpse the higher rail, but you keep living from the lower rail's habits. Integration is how you stop that spin. Integration is how you tell the field, I am not only a spectator of destiny, I am a carrier. So let's make this exquisitely practical, without losing the mystic. First, you integrate a frequency by teaching your body to experience it as normal. Not as a peak moment, not as, wow, that meditation was crazy, but as baseline. Your nervous system must be shown, over and over, what coherence feels like, until calm, clear, prophetic perception becomes your default climate. That's why breath is not a side practice here, it is a delivery system. Slow, rhythmic, heart-centered breathing tells your field, we are safe enough to perceive. And when your field feels safe, it can run higher code. Fear and prophecy don't coexist well. Second, you integrate by narrating from the rail you chose. Words are quantum selectors. Every time you say, the world is getting worse, you feed the forgetful rail. Every time you say, humanity is remembering, you feed the awakened rail. You think you're just talking, but your voice is a tuning fork. Start speaking like someone who has seen the code, not performatively, not to impress anyone, but because it keeps your perception lined up. I am being guided. The field knows where to put me. I am part of a planetary coherence movement. These are not affirmations, they are descriptions of what is already true in the quantum. Third, you integrate by making micro-choices that honor the vision. People wait for huge, cinematic destiny moments. When I launch, when I move, when I finally quit, when people get me. But the field is watching the small choices, what you consume, what you amplify, what conversations you entertain, what you scroll past, what you celebrate. Each micro-choice either stabilizes the awakened signal or leaks it. Integration is leak reduction. Fourth, you integrate by community entanglement. The code wants to travel. When you share transmissions, have high-frequency conversations, attend gatherings where people are talking quantum, nervous system, prophecy, new earth, you create constructive interference. Your field and their field overlap, and the shared frequency gets louder. This is why certain rooms, certain videos, certain teachers make you feel more like yourself. You're in an entangled coherence zone. Make those zones a priority. Isolation is a tactic of the old rail. Fifth, you integrate by embodiment rituals. The field loves repetition with reverence. Maybe for you it's a sunrise walk where you state, out loud, the rail you choose. Maybe it's sitting in stillness for 11 minutes and letting the column of light you saw in part 3 descend through your spine. Maybe it's blessing your food with, I receive light into matter. Maybe it's writing every morning, I am an awakened observer shaping human destiny. The content can be simple, the repetition is the magic. Ritual turns revelation into muscle memory. And there is one more layer, forgiveness of oscillation. You will not hold the highest frequency every day. You will forget. You will scroll into density. You will believe an old story. That does not mean you lost the code. It means you are human, integrating across nervous system, ancestry, culture, and time. The mature observer doesn't spiral into shame when they dip. They notice, breathe, reselect the rail, and return to coherence sometimes in minutes. That speed of return is a sign of integration. Feel what's happening now. The prophecy is moving from beautiful transmission I once heard to operating system I actually live. The field trusts those who integrate, because integrated observers don't need constant fireworks. They can be sent into ordinary spaces, families, workplaces, social media, and the frequency will stay on. That's what you are becoming, a quiet transmitter of the awakened rail. From here, the field will invite you into something even subtler, the space between signals, the holy pause where prophecy ripens. That is the silence phase. There comes a moment in every revelation where the field stops speaking in sentences and starts speaking in silence. You've noticed this before, after a strong insight, after a dream that felt more real than waking, after a meditation where you touched something ancient. There's a hush, a soft, spacious afterglow. The mind wants to rush in and use it, explain it, teach it, but the intelligence underneath won't let you. It stretches the moment. It slows the breath. That is not emptiness. That is propagation. The code you just received is echoing through layers of you don't consciously manage. This silence is not inactivity. It's integration below language level. Remember, your conscious mind is not the only listener here. Your cells heard the transmission. Your fascia heard it. Your genetic memory heard it. The parts of you that were born in other eras, other cultures, other star systems, they heard it. They need time to rethread themselves around what was just revealed. If you speak too soon, teach too soon, post too soon. You sometimes stamp the frequency into a smaller shape than it wanted to take. Silence protects the amplitude, so the field invites you, do nothing, while everything rearranges. Sit, breathe in 4, breathe out 6. Let the column of light you saw earlier descend again, but this time with no effort. Feel it settle behind your heart, between your shoulder blades, at the back of your throat. Notice how, in the quiet, your perception sharpens. You hear subtle sounds in the room. You sense subtle movements in your aura. You can almost feel timelines like soft threads moving around you. This is the quantum field at conversational distance. It speaks best when you stop interrupting. In this phase, you are not trying to manifest. You are letting yourself be manifested. You are letting the awakened rail print itself through you. You are letting the prophecy pick its own doorway into your life. Maybe it will emerge as new language for your work. Maybe as a sudden clarity about where to live. Maybe as an impulse to reach someone specific. Maybe as a new piece of art or a new business model that carries the frequency of coherence. You don't have to decide it here. You just have to stay available. Silence is also protection from the collective noise, because right now, the forgetful rail is loud. It wants your outrage, your constant reaction, your compulsive commentary. It wants you in reactivity loops so you don't notice how powerful your non-reactive observation is. When you enter deliberate silence, not avoidance, but sacred stillness, you step out of the algorithmic swarm. You return to original signal. You remember, oh right, the field is gentle, the field is spacious, the field is not rushing me. That remembrance is itself a counter-broadcast to humanity. Awakening does not have to be frantic. In the quiet, something else appears. Gratitude. Not sentimental gratitude, but the profound realization that you have been trusted with sight. That out of billions of human perspectives, yours was invited to see the code powering human destiny. That is not small. That is not random. Let that gratitude rise like warm light in your chest. Gratitude is a coherence accelerator. It tells the field, yes, I consent. Yes, I receive. Yes, I will steward this well. The field loves that. It pours more. If, in this silence, old pain surfaces, let it. Sometimes when higher frequency lands, lower frequency residue floats up to be cleared. Old shame, old I am not ready, old who am I to speak about destiny, old people won't understand. Don't argue with it. Let it pass through the quiet. The silence can metabolize it. You don't have to fix everything before you embody the prophecy. You just have to keep the channel open long enough for the field to finish its work. Notice how, even as we speak less, the presence grows thicker. That is the sign you're doing it right. Silence is not absence. Silence is density. A denser field around you means future instructions can land with less distortion, which means the next phase, the activation, can be clean, powerful, and precise. Because after the silence, the field will speak again, this time not to show you the code, but to turn it on in you. Silence made space. Now the field moves. You feel it first as a pressure, not heavy, but deliberate, like reality, leaning in. The quiet you just held becomes conductive. The code you saw in light form earlier begins to translate into bioform. This is the moment prophecy stops being something I heard and becomes something I am. Activation is not fireworks. Activation is a handover. The field is handing responsibility to you. Here's what's happening underneath. The quantum field has confirmed your readiness through 3 signals. Your attention stayed, your heart opened, and your nervous system didn't reject the higher pattern. That's all it needed. So now, it begins to bind the awakened rail to your personal timeline. Think of it like splicing. Your future days, conversations, creations, even your future confusions are now being threaded with the frequency of remembrance. You will not again be fully satisfied with small, forgetful reality. That longing you sometimes felt for more, it will no longer be vague. It will be directive. Activation always starts in perception. From this point on, you will notice subtle divergences faster. You will catch yourself when you start narrating from the old rail. You will hear when a collective story is running fear as currency. You will see when a person is speaking from trauma rather than truth. Before, those moments would pull you in. Now, you will be able to observe without swallowing. That is an activated observer, compassion intact, boundaries intact, vision intact. Then activation moves to speech. Your language will begin to upgrade. Phrases will arrive mid-conversation that you didn't rehearse. You will say things and feel, that wasn't just me. That's because once the code sits in your field, the field begins to use your mouth, not to control you, but to circulate coherence. You will find yourself explaining quantum causality to someone who has never read a book on it, and they'll get it, because you're not transmitting from mind, you're transmitting from activated pattern. You become a relay point for prophecy. Then activation moves to assignment. The field does not awaken observers to make them feel special. It awakens observers to position them. So don't be surprised if, in the days and weeks following this transmission, you are nudged towards specific work, specific people, specific content, specific places. You'll feel drawn to start the channel, record the message, open the retreat, write the book, speak to that friend, mentor that younger version of yourself. That isn't random inspiration, it's deployment. The awakened rail needs builders, artists, teachers, healers, technologists, parents, organizers who carry the code consciously. You are being placed. And there is one more layer, identity activation. You can no longer hold the identity of someone trying to awaken. That identity was useful. It got you searching, but you have crossed a threshold. To keep calling yourself lost, behind, not ready, would be to argue with what the field has already ratified. Activation is the field saying, this one remembers. Your task is to agree. You agree every time you choose coherence over noise. You agree every time you speak from vision instead of victim. You agree every time you refuse to perform smallness to stay relatable. Will you still oscillate? Yes. Activation doesn't delete your humanity. It reorients it. Even on lower days, the code stays on. Even when your emotions dip, the awakened rail keeps pulsing under the surface. You might forget for an hour, but you won't forget for a lifetime. Activation sets a floor beneath which your consciousness will not fall again. That's why some transmissions are called once only. Once you've seen, you can't unsee. Once you've been added to the network of awakened observers, your field is kept online. Feel into this now. Your single, personal awakening is being counted toward the planetary tally. Every observer that activates makes the awakened timeline more statistically inevitable. That is what you just activated. The hidden quantum code that shapes human destiny actually means your yes added voltage to the rail in which humanity remembers itself. Quietly, without announcement, the future just shifted a fraction. That is the power of one coherent observer. Hold this. One final seal remains. This is where we close the loop. You have been called, recognized, shown the vision, taught the mechanics, reflected in the collective, ushered through the split, instructed in integration, slowed into silence, and finally activated. There is only one thing left to do. Seal it. A seal is not decoration. It is a conscious agreement between observer and field. It says, what was revealed will not be dissolved by doubt, delay, or distraction. It will live through me. 1. So hear this with your whole being. You are now carrying a living code that was never meant to stay on screens or in notebooks. It was meant to sit in human breath, in your breath. It was meant to travel through ordinary sentences, through your eyes when you look at people, through the way you stabilize rooms, through the way you speak over your bloodline, through the way you refuse to narrate decline when you can perceive emergence. That is prophecy embodied, not performance, not self-importance, but calm, unwavering remembrance. From this day forward, the field will treat you as someone who knows. It will send you confirmations faster. It will send you people who are standing in the fog between timelines. It will send you glimpses of what humanity can become, sometimes so beautiful it hurts, and sometimes it will test you with noise, with density, with old shadows rising, not to punish you, but to help you choose again. Every rechoice is another seal. Every "I still choose the awakened" rail is another layer of authority. Let this be spoken over you. You are an awakened observer in the era of planetary bifurcation. You remember that perception is causal. You remember that the quantum field is listening. You remember that human destiny is not a closed book, but a co-authored manuscript. You remember that DNA can restructure in the presence of coherent love. You remember that synchronicity is instruction, not entertainment. You remember that silence is also revelation. You remember that your personal healing is part of the species healing. You remember that the future is not waiting, it is watching. And finally, remember this. The prophecy does not end when the video ends. Prophecy lives as long as someone carries it. Tonight, when you lie down, it will still be present. Tomorrow, when you wake up, it will still be humming. Weeks from now, when you're about to make a decision, you will feel it nudge you toward the rail that serves the whole. That's how you'll know the seal held. So we close with a simple, ancient formula, updated for this quantum age. The code has been revealed. The observer has received it. The field has witnessed it. Therefore, let it unfold through you. The prophecy has been spoken. Let humanity feel it through your life.